Commitment 2020 News, NBC News, is projecting former Vice President Joe Biden will win the South Carolina primary. They're basing that on exit polling.
It came in around 7:01, just as soon as the polls closed. We're getting our first look at the results coming in tonight. We're seeing these as you do, and you see the lineup right there, Carol.
We should point out that in South Carolina, delegates are handed out proportionally. There's about 54 delegates that are available, and there is a formula for giving them out. We are hearing, however, that Joe Biden will probably get the lion's share of the delegates.
Yeah, he was at 51% right there. Again, it's early in the vote count, but clear that's the way things are shaking out tonight. We do have live crews all over the Carolinas for you tonight.
Our Jane Robelo is covering the Joe Biden campaign. And Jane, what's the mood now that the results are coming in?
Well, Carol and Michael, there was a great big cheer that just came up from here. This is the Carolina Volleyball Arena at University of South Carolina. You see on the big screen behind me, they've got MSNBC up, and every time they show something like Joe Biden projected winner, 54% of the vote over Bernie Sanders, the closest at 15, the crowd goes crazy. But you all were mentioning the delegate count just a couple of minutes ago. That's exactly what Joe Biden needed. He needed to win, but he needed to win really as many of the delegates as he can, and it looks like he's won them all. A huge cheer arose right before you all came to me when MSNBC projected that Joe Biden would win all 54 of the delegates in South Carolina. If that is indeed true, if that holds up, then that will put him in second place in delegate counts. So the mood here, incredible. Now, I've seen a couple of people starting to come in here. I heard there was a party with the candidate, hearsay, but there was a party with the candidate here in Columbia. Some of the people who were attending that party have now come into the arena, so perhaps Joe Biden is not very far behind. This place is energized, and I have to say, too, it's pretty fascinating. There's a lot of international media here as well. Al Jazeera is here, 2 stations from Japan, Telemundo, TV Globo, so it's not just a South Carolina affair. This is a global affair up on the media stage tonight, Michael and Carol.
Jane, a quick question. Of course, Congressman Jim Clyburn a few days ago endorsing the former vice president. What's the Clyburn effect there in the room? And is the congressman with Joe Biden tonight?
He is indeed with the former vice president tonight, and he is expected to come to the arena with him. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him on the stage. You know, Michael and Carol, he's often called the kingmaker. He is the most powerful African-American in Congress, certainly beloved in South Carolina in his district. And everybody was kind of on pins and needles to see whether or not he would indeed endorse anyone. And on Wednesday, he gave Joe Biden that endorsement, and that is when we started to see the margins widen in the polls. Joe Biden had a pretty big lead last fall in the polls, but it got narrow and narrower as Tom Steyer spent more money on television ads and as Bernie Sanders picked up a lot of the younger voters. But that was it, Michael. I believe that most people would agree that Jim Clyburn's endorsement on Wednesday was it. In fact, Pete Buttigieg was supposed to have a Friday event meeting with African-American mayors of small towns, and they canceled that event, saying that Jim Clyburn's endorsement meant everything to them and that they could no longer even hear what Pete Buttigieg had to say. So, yeah, grand slam for Joe Biden for sure.
Jane, we heard the music dip behind you a moment ago, and we were thinking maybe that meant Joe Biden was in the building about to speak. Do you have any idea when he might be in that room to speak to his supporters?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, about 15 minutes ago, they started chanting, Joe, 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 and it's really tough to get to where I am. I was down in the press working on my computer, and I came darting back up here thinking maybe the candidate was on his way. But again, we're seeing a lot of people who were most likely at the candidate party start to come in now. So it may be soon. Although, maybe this is a night that Joe Biden just really wants to enjoy and revel in. Would be his first primary win. He's run for president 3 times, so maybe he wants to sit back and enjoy. But certainly the crowd here is ready for him, Carol, anytime.
Well, so are we, Jane. As soon as the vice president comes into the room and takes the mic, we'll get back to that. We will let you know that we'll be back to you shortly here.
President Donald Trump weighed in on the primary on Twitter as soon as the projection came out calling the race for Joe Biden.
He said, quoting here, "Sleepy Joe Biden's victory in the South Carolina Democratic primary should be the end of mini Mike Bloomberg's joke of a campaign." Again, I'm quoting here, "After the worst debate performance in the history of presidential debates, mini Mike now has Biden split up his very few voters, taking many away," close quote.
Shifting to the Sanders campaign now, he came out strong in the first several primaries, the caucus, and he is looking for another strong finish here. It does not look like he got it in South Carolina.
Campaign strong in the upstate in the last few days. Our Renee Wunderlich is covering the Sanders campaign tonight in Columbia. Renee, he is coming in second at the moment, and a fairly distant second at that.
Well, Michael, Carol, good evening. It's an interesting mood here in the Sanders party. I'm at a watch party at Medallion Conference Center in Columbia, and right now we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen next. I was speaking with a few campaign officials. They've declined to go on camera and give an interview. A lot of them are looking at their phones, figuring out when or what time or if speakers will take the podium behind me. You can take a closer look at the crowd here. You do see Sanders supporters. You see a fair amount of Bernie shirts, of Bernie signs. In fact, I was speaking with some of his supporters earlier today, and just a few moments ago in the audience, education seems to be a big topic here. A lot of people in this audience tonight, young people who tell me that they have student loans, that they're concerned about their futures, and that's why they're supporting candidate Bernie Sanders. Though, like you mentioned, it's not particularly a joyful mood in the room as this moment. It's kind of an odd feeling. It's not quite somber. It's not joyous either. It's the mood, if I had to describe it, would be unclear. Now, earlier in the evening, I did see one of Sanders' supporters, one of his surrogates, former Senator Nina Turner. She did not give any interviews. She was speaking with a few supporters before she stepped into a back room. We should point out that Bernie Sanders is not in South Carolina. He was at a rally in Virginia earlier today, but his supporters behind me say that they're really hoping that even if he does not win South Carolina, that he will win strong in other states come Super Tuesday. Michael, Carol?
Now, Renee, you mentioned that Senator Sanders is not in South Carolina. He has moved ahead to some of the Super Tuesday states. Was there the sense that you think that perhaps he thought that South Carolina would not be his and it was time to move on to Super Tuesday?
Well, I'm not a campaign official, and I wouldn't want to speak for the senator. It's a little unclear, to be honest. Speaking with supporters yesterday and the day before, speaking with the senator 2 days before, he was very confident. He was calling for a record turnout. He was encouraging young people, working people to come out and vote. This, of course, is what his hopes were. It's really unclear whether or not this was calculated or whether he was just trying to move forward in his campaign. One can always imagine that there is strategy in something like this. Though what's interesting about covering Sanders, I covered him in 2016 and now again in 2020. A lot of his messages are the same. Some people tonight were asking me, coming up to me and saying, "Where's Bernie? Where's Bernie?" And I had to inform them that he was not physically here. So there was some disappointment from supporters who felt that maybe they were going to get to see or hear from him tonight. Others knew that he was in Virginia. They were following him on social media, and yet they're here all the same. Carol?
Renee, thank you. We continue our live coverage with Tom Steyer's campaign.
So many ads. He outspent everybody in South Carolina. Amanda Crawford is also live in Columbia. Amanda, what's the mood in that crowd? How's everybody feeling right now?
The mood is still upbeat here tonight. You know, their candidate didn't win, but you may not know that by just looking around the room here. The music is loud, the drinks are flowing. A lot of these people are happy with the momentum they've gained here in South Carolina. This is the best Tom Steyer has done in the states that have voted so far. I spoke to Tom when he was polling in the top 3, and he called that great momentum that he was going to use moving forward to prove that he's the outside candidate who can unite the party. I spoke with a spokesperson for his national campaign just a little bit ago, and he told me there's no surprises tonight, no big disappointments so far. He said that they are encouraged by the exit polls that indicate the African-American voter turnout was good, and that voters were telling the pollsters that they wanted change. They think that bodes well for Tom moving forward. Again, they tell me they're going to use this momentum to move into Super Tuesday and hopefully continue their campaign's energy moving forward. in about an hour. His people told me they are going to wait until former Vice President Joe Biden speaks, and he will be speaking to his supporters here shortly after that. He is heading on to Selma tonight, again, moving forward, continuing to use this momentum he's built up in South Carolina to move on into Super Tuesday. He tells me he has not lost any faith in his campaign. He plans to keep on moving forward and going as far as he can. He has said over and over again, though, that he will support the Democratic nominee, whoever that ends up being. So again, we are expecting to hear from Tom. We're expecting him to take that stage in about an hour and talk to his voters here. He's had one of the biggest teams here in South Carolina. In fact, I think it was the biggest team, and a lot of those people were from right here in South Carolina. That was something that he touted a lot at his events throughout Columbia today and over the past week. So again, a lot of people tonight here who are still happy with the way things are turning out so far today, and they're still watching those detailed results come in and still waiting to hear Tom come on the stage and speak, and we'll be bringing that to you just as soon as he comes out. For now, we'll send it back to you guys.
Yeah, Amanda, we continue to watch the room there, watching for the former vice president to come into the room there in Columbia. A quick question for you. The people in the room, the people who support Tom Steyer, what are they excited about? What is it about him that brings them out on this cold Saturday night to anticipate a celebration?
And it's not just that they're out on a cold Saturday night, it's that they're here from all across the country. I heard one woman saying that she's here from upstate New York and that she's traveled to other states to help campaign for Tom Steyer as well. A lot of them have said they think that Tom has a unique outsider factor. They like that he is not part of the institution. They like that he doesn't have experience in Washington. They like that he is focused on the environment. That's one of the top things I've heard some of his supporters say, is that they've been waiting for a candidate to make some promises on environment and climate change. And you know, Tom has said that on day one in the White House, should he get there, he would declare a national emergency on climate change. So that is something that has set him apart a little bit, according to his supporters at least. They like that he's talked a lot about that. They also like that he has focused on energizing the African-American vote here in South Carolina. That's something that he has talked about over and over again. He says he's the only candidate who's talking about reparations. So I think he's chosen a few topics that made him stand out to some people, at least the people here tonight in this room, and they still feel very energized by his showing in South Carolina, and they're hoping that this can carry him forward at least a little bit longer. Michael Carroll, we'll send it back.
It shows in the dance music tonight. Amanda Crawford, thank you very much. Let's get a look at the numbers. Do we have the latest numbers on the vote count here? Holding strong, Joe Biden is up, my count, 2 points from just a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
Carol.
these are 11% of the precincts reporting right now. Bernie Sanders with 17%, Tom Steyer 12%, and Pete Buttigieg with 8% of the vote. Next page, please. Here's what we have. Elizabeth Warren with 7%, Amy Klobuchar with 3%, and Tulsi Gabbard 1% of the vote, again with 11% of the precincts reporting. Now, while the candidates did work to earn votes, what they really wanted to leave South Carolina with is delegates.
That's what gets you the win. The state will have 63 delegates at the National Convention. That's the National Democratic Convention. 54 of those are up for grabs on this Saturday election night. 19 are assigned proportionally based on the statewide vote. Any candidate who gets at least 15% of the statewide tally is eligible to receive at least one of those 15 delegates.
The other 35 are also assigned proportionally, but at the U.S. House district level. Now, here's a look at how many delegates each district has. Those numbers were determined by Democratic vote totals in 2016 and again in 2018. They looked at the trend. Again, to get any of these delegates, a candidate must get at least 15% of the vote in the congressional district. Michael, that brings up the question of whether Bernie Sanders will get at least one delegate vote. We'd have to see the breakout.
We'll see that probably by midnight tonight. Clearly a very, very good night for Joe Biden. Pretty disappointing night for Bernie Sanders, especially given how much time he spent in South Carolina. As those results come in, so do the feedback on social media.
A team at Clemson is analyzing them as they come in, those comments. Our Alan Devlin is live in the social media listening center there at Clemson University. Alan?
Where did South Carolina go? Yeah, Michael, Carol, I'm here at the Clemson University Social Media Listening Center. Like you just said, students have been working all evening to pull and analyze data from across social media to kind of check to see what the public opinion is. Right now, I am here with Dr. Bruce Ransom. He's co-director of the Palmetto poll, the South Carolina Palmetto poll, that accurately predicted Joe Biden winning the South Carolina primary. As of now, NBC has reported he is projected to win. So, Dr. Ransom, what about tonight? This primary surprised you?
Well, the surprise is twofold at this time. One is, yes, we projected Joe Biden's win, but results so far, we still got a little less than 20% of the vote counted. But he's winning with over 50%, 51, 52% of the vote. That is a surprise. If that holds, surely a surprise. And then we also picked Tom Steyer to place in second. Right now he's in third and Sanders is in second place. But it's clear that though those positions may have switched, Biden at the end of the day, if this holds, has achieved his firewall that he was projecting that he would do in South Carolina. So it looks very promising for his candidacy at this time.
Exactly.
And we were on target with that.
Exactly, Doctor. So this was, of course, a big win for Joe Biden. So what does being able to carry South Carolina mean for the Biden campaign moving forward with Super Tuesday right around the corner?
Right. Well, the first thing is a win. There were two primaries, one primary rather, and one caucus prior to today rather, and he lost the first two, and he was in second place in Nevada a week ago, but a distant third place. So tonight, if this holds, this is a huge win, and so this is something that would give him momentum going forth into Super Tuesday. Now, Super Tuesday is what, 72 hours or so away. And he has, as someone said, I won't name who it was, said Big Mo on his side, big momentum, and hopefully he will be able to capitalize on it and have some additional victories on Tuesday. And so this puts him in a position, he's perched to be able to achieve that. And so he not just won, he won, well, he hadn't, it's not over yet, but it's been projected that he's going to win. So let me get too far in my comment. But he demonstrated that he is a vote getter. He did get votes today. And this just bodes very well for his candidacy going forward, and he has to take advantage of it.
Exactly. All right, thank you so much, Doctor. I appreciate it. So for now, of course, those results are still coming in across the state. These students are going to continue to pull data from social media and view sort of an online exit poll, so to say, as people begin to tweet. We've already seen Joe Biden start to gain a lot of momentum on social media. He right now is the talk of the town now that NBC has projected a win here in South Carolina. So I'll be here for the rest of the night bringing you that information as it becomes available. For now, we're live from Clemson's campus. Alan Devlin, WYFF News 4. Back to you.
Alan, thank you very much. Now, we have mentioned that NBC News has projected Joe Biden as the winner in this based on exit polls.
Right.
Other major news organizations have done the same. But let's take another look at the results coming in live to our newsroom now. They are beginning to trickle in 2% more than just a few moments ago when we brought you these results.
These are actual vote counts, actual percentages. You see there with Joe Biden getting well north of 50% right now. That was not expected by some of the polling. Bernie Sanders at 17%. Tom Steyer, who spent so much money and a considerable time in South Carolina, at 11% right now. This with 13% of precincts reporting. But we do have a good cross-section of South Carolina with 13% reporting. And you see the other candidates there, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, in the single digits right now.
In fact, some of these candidates no longer in the state. They have moved on because, of course, upcoming in just a couple of days, Super Tuesday, with that treasure trove of
yes,
of
lots of them.
Yeah. Pete Buttigieg is currently standing in 4th place.
Nigel Robertson covering his campaign tonight. He joins us from our Greenville newsroom. Nigel, what's happening with him?
Yeah, well, Carol and Michael, Pete Buttigieg is in Raleigh, North Carolina tonight. We are waiting to hear from him. But this is a tough night for the Buttigieg campaign because they really wanted to put out an effort to get as many votes as possible in South Carolina, but they struggled from the get-go. We were with some campaign staff today as they were out canvassing neighborhoods, knocking on doors, trying to get the Pete Buttigieg message out there. Some people didn't answer their door, talked through their door. Others that didn't come to the door, they left pamphlets so that people who live there and who don't know about Pete Buttigieg and know what he stands for could read it and hopefully get out to vote. Pete Buttigieg struggled quite a bit with the African-American vote in South Carolina. That's what polls were saying. And his campaign wanted to make every effort possible to reach out to every voter in South Carolina, but definitely that African-American vote. Consider this. If we could show the latest poll numbers or the results tonight, I want to show you Pete Buttigieg, remember, in Iowa was first. In New Hampshire came second. In Nevada came third. And you see here in South Carolina, Pete Buttigieg right now is in fourth place. Yesterday, he was number 2 in the delegate count. Today, as of right now, he is slipping to third. Pete Buttigieg again, focusing on Super Tuesday. He was in Nashville earlier. He's in Raleigh tonight. And he had a town hall in Texas earlier via the internet. So he's really focused on those Super Tuesday states. We will hear from him tonight, but again, his campaign tried very hard in South Carolina, but the numbers right now not coming out in Pete Buttigieg's favor. Carol, Michael, back to you.
Yeah, Nigel, what you point out there, this really sums up why South Carolina is so important, sort of the gateway to the nomination so many times in history.
We have heard a lot of analysts say that it reflects more fully the diversity of the rest of the country, especially in the Democratic Party. Correct. Let's take another look at the results coming in live to our newsroom now. Let's see how much of the vote is in. 14% now. Joe Biden still in the lead with 53%, 17% for Bernie Sanders. Tom Steyer's at 11%, Pete Buttigieg 8%. That number just changed.
Yeah, just watch this throughout the night, folks, and we'll see how well this holds. We'll see if Joe Biden's lead does tend to go up a little bit. But it's very interesting what we have with 15% now. You see quite a game changer for Joe Biden in South Carolina, really outpacing anticipations, outpacing the polls as well.
Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard, who came in last in this state, not included in the debate. She didn't make enough of a percentage to be included in that. Correct. She's in California now and is expected to stay there until Super Tuesday.
Looking at the room there in the Joe Biden camp in Columbia, somebody is at the mic. As soon as the vice president, former vice president comes in, of course, we'll get that to you live. We do have live crews all over the Carolinas for you tonight.
Yeah, and our Jane Robelo is covering the Joe Biden campaign. Jane, we know there's somebody up at the microphone. Are we getting ready for Joe Biden, do you think?
You know, Carol, we're all very jumpy around here waiting on the candidate to come into the room. The room fell silent when those people came up. We all waited to see what they were doing. Not sure if it was a mic check, but possibly. Another big cheer that led up about 10 minutes ago. And again, we all turned around thinking maybe the candidate was coming into the room. But in fact, MSNBC had put up on the screen that Michael Bloomberg has the lowest favorability ratings of any of the candidates so far. Now, he wasn't even on the ballot in South Carolina, but a huge cheer erupted from the room when they posted that up there. Now, one very important thing, we're talking about the delegate count. We're talking about whether or not Joe Biden can come out of South Carolina with enough steam to do well in Super Tuesday. But one point that a lot of people who have endorsed Joe Biden have made is that he would be the best of these candidates at the top of the ballot. That's a phrase that we're hearing a lot, but basically what that means is that at the very top of the ballot, when you go to vote in November, the first election that you vote for is the president. Then after that, it's the U.S. Senate, Congress if there is one, etc., and then state races. So whoever's at the top of the ballot is the one that can energize those particular voters to go out and vote for that presidential candidate. And typically it tends to help the people, quote, down the ballot. So in South Carolina, that would be very, very important for a candidate like, say, Jamie Harrison. He's challenging Senator Lindsey Graham for his Senate seat. So top of the ballot is what a lot of the people are hoping for when it comes to which candidate would help the most. And a lot of people are saying that they believe Joe Biden is that man. When is he coming out here? I don't know, but I can tell you that we're all very jumpy. Anytime this crowd turns or moves, we're right on it. Our cameras are focused up. we're ready to go as soon as he comes out here, where we'll bring you all of the candidates' comments in a very, very energized arena. I'm Jane Rovelo, live in Columbia.
Going to be jumpy right along with you, Jane. A quick question, if we can get back to Jane. I hope she can hear us here. Jane, you talked to Joe Biden recently. What was his mood going into this night? Was he anticipating this kind of win, or is he going to be surprised?
You know, Michael, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was actually very surprised. I interviewed him one-on-one last night at an event in Wofford, and this is as we're seeing his polls higher than they've ever been. And I said, so what do you think of South Carolina now? Are you really excited? Do you love our state? And he said, you know, I'm just very cautious. I just don't want to celebrate until it's over. He was very calm. Could tell he was very pleased, but I really do feel like he sincerely was just waiting to see what the voters would do. And he did say something that I felt was very sincere. He said, I've been to South Carolina a lot. The state means a lot to me. I was very close to Senator Ernest Hollings. I spent a lot of time in his state. We were very close. The people here are very special to me. And he said, I know the people of South Carolina, and I hope they know me. And if I get a good win, then I'll know that the people of South Carolina really do know who I am. But yeah, he was really remarkably reserved last night, considering what the polls were showing, Michael.
Jane, one more question. Can we underestimate the power that the Congressman Jim Clyburn's endorsement gave to the Biden campaign?
You know, Carol, I think a lot of people were not really, he was saying that he probably wasn't going to make an endorsement. His grandson is working on the Pete Buttigieg campaign, and he said that's fine. But then he said that he had one of his constituents ask him who he was voting for. She said, I want you to tell me, because I need to know. And he said that's when he realized that people really were looking to his leadership. And he said that his wife, Emily, who had passed away several months ago, was a big, big fan of Joe Biden. And she was very, very much in favor of his potential candidacy. And so he felt like he owed it to her memory and also the people in his 6th congressional district to let them know that he would indeed be voting for Joe Biden. I don't know that anybody expected the groundswell of support. I mean, that was wind in his sails that pushed him over the finish line, perhaps in the biggest way possible, which would be getting all 54 delegates.
Well, Congressman Clyburn, with what the political analysts call a very safe district down there, you get a sense, Jane, from the Clyburn timing that he came out with that endorsement just a few days before the primary in order to have it linger in the minds of the voters? Was timing a factor here?
Michael, it must be. I mean, you know, we've all covered political campaigns for a few decades now, and we do know that people forget very quickly, and we know that people are very fickle. Okay, a little cheer going up here. Somebody is coming into the room. I'm not sure if it's the candidate, but MSNBC is off the screen, and
we can see, Jane.
Maybe not. Somebody came into the room. Sorry. We're just going to continue. Oh, y'all can probably see better than I can, Michael. But back to that line. We know that people have very short memories, and voters can be very fickle. So I have to agree with you that the timing on that had to be very well planned. Or, I mean, it could be both. It could be that really Representative Clyburn really had not planned to make an endorsement, and then, you know, after hearing from his constituents, decided to. But either way, it certainly did work very, very well in Joe Biden's favor.
Jane, one more question for you. Do we know where Joe Biden is?
Can y'all tell who that is that just came in? Yeah.
It looked like a group of people came in.
No, I did. I've been. Yeah, you know, one person that you will see in this room.
We hate to interrupt Jane, but.
Let me start off by thanking Herb Jones. For too long, we have taken veterans in this country for granted. We have sent them off to wars, and too often those wars were wars that should never have been fought. And then, after they put their lives on the line and they come home, sometimes injured in body and sometimes injured in spirit, we have forgotten about them. So my promise to Herb and to all the other veterans of this country, and I say this as the former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, our administration will never forget the veterans, and our administration will never put the men and women in the armed forces in wars that should not be fought. We are here tonight because we are determined that Donald Trump will be a one-term president. The American people, no matter what their political views may be, do not want a president in office who is a pathological liar, who is running a corrupt administration, who apparently has never read the Constitution of the United States, and who every day, through his attacks on the media, on the judiciary, on Congress, is undermining American democracy. Veterans like Herb and millions of others have put their lives on the line to defend our democracy and our Constitution, and Donald Trump will not undermine American democracy. Now, I am very proud that in this campaign so far, we have won the popular vote in Iowa. We have won the New Hampshire primary. We have won the Nevada caucus. But you cannot win them all. A lot of states out there, and tonight we did not win in South Carolina. And that will not be the only defeat. There are a lot of states in this country, nobody wins them all. I want to congratulate Joe Biden on his victory tonight. And now we enter Super Tuesday in Virginia. And I believe very strongly that the people of this country on Super Tuesday and after are going to support our campaign, because we are more than a campaign, we are a movement. We are a multi-generational movement. I'm the young person. We've got some old people too. We are a multi-racial movement. And we are a movement of millions of people who demand economic justice in this country, demand social justice and the end of racism and all forms of discrimination, and who demand environmental justice as well. We are a movement of millions of people who are sick and tired of the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America. We are tired of a handful of billionaires controlling the economic and political life of this nation. And we will create an economy and a government that work for all of us, not just the 1%. And that is what this campaign is about. This campaign understands that in order to defeat Donald Trump, and we have to be very clear about it, can't mince words about it, in order to defeat Trump, we are going to need the largest voter turnout in the history of this country. And in my view, old-fashioned politics, the same old type of politics that doesn't excite anybody, that doesn't energize anybody, that is not going to be the campaign that beats Trump. In order to beat Trump, what we are going to have to do is speak to millions of working class people who today are working 2 or 3 jobs. They're worried about their kids, they're worried about their retirement, they can't afford health care, and they are saying, who cares about me? Who is worried about me? I've seen candidates run to billionaires' homes to raise money. Does anybody worry about me and my kids? And our job together is to reach out to those working people and say, you know what? We do care about you. Join us. Come on into our movement. And then we've got to reach out to the young people in this country. The young people in America today, and I'm proud to say this, they are the most progressive generation of young people in the history of this country. This is a generation that is strongly anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobia, anti-religious bigotry. This is a generation that believes in the need to deal with the crisis of climate change. But this is also a generation that does not vote in the numbers that they need to vote. So our job, if we are going to beat Trump, is to say to those millions of young people, if you can't afford to go to college or you're leaving school deeply in debt, join us. If you're worried about the future of this planet and climate change, join us. If you are earning less money, as the younger generation is, than your parents, and you think you are entitled to a decent standard of living, join us. If you're sick and tired of trying to pay off your student debt, join us. So our job is to grow the voter turnout in America. I can't do it alone. I need every one of you to reach out to your friends. And when your friends moan and groan about this and they moan and groan about that, tell them complaining is not good enough. They've got to get into the political process, stand up and fight for justice. Now, in case you haven't noticed, the political and economic establishment of this country, they're getting very nervous about our campaign. Just read an article the other day that the lobbyists for the military-industrial complex, they're very worried. They're worried that we may not continue spending more money on the military than the next 11 countries combined. They are worried that we're not going to allow military contractors to give us massive cost overruns. And they're very worried that we are not going to be involved in endless wars. And they are right to be worried. And it turns out the folks on Wall Street are getting worried as well. And they're worried that we're going to break up these very large banks that got us into an economic crisis 12 years ago. You know what? They should be worried. And the drug companies, man, they are really worried. Because we are catching on to the reality that they are ripping off the American people in an unseemly way. That in some cases they are charging us 10 times more for the same exact drugs that they sell in other countries. And the insurance companies are getting just a little bit nervous. Because we are going to end the absurdity of the United States being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Now, what the establishment is saying, what the lobbyists are saying and the political pundits are saying, everybody's saying, oh, Bernie Sanders can't beat Trump. Well, to those folks, I would suggest take a look at the last 70 national polls.
All right, you've been listening to Bernie Sanders, who came in a distant second here in South Carolina. He said you can't win them all. We did not win in South Carolina. Now we go on to Super Tuesday here in Virginia. But on stage now at the Biden campaign.
That is Congressman Jim Clyburn, whose endorsement clearly was big. Look how excited that room is right there. Bernie Sanders, of course, giving a concession speech and a campaign speech at the same time. Again, can't win them all. Congratulating Joe Biden.
Thank you very, very much.
Here's the congressman.
Let me begin by thanking all of you for taking a little time out of your lives to come here and help us enhance the life of this great country. Thank you. I want to thank some of my colleagues over here, Alma Adams from North Carolina, Congresswoman from Charlotte, Senators Malloy and Kempson, who have been up and down with me for the last 2 days. Thank you. My daughters, Jennifer, Angela, thank you all so much. They have been as emotional about this last week experience as any two people I know, and I thank them so much. They've become so much a part of me. As many of you know, I studied history, used to teach history. And I've said often to those students that I used to teach who would question, why did we spend so much time reading and studying and discussing those things that happened way back yonder? And I'll often say to them, we study history in order to understand the present and to prepare for the future. Because anything that's happened before can happen again. And tonight, as I stand here, I am thinking about some of that history. Yes, sir. And I'm recalling something that's really attributed to a great Frenchman who came to this country to study our penal system and came to the conclusion that there was something magical about the United States of America. Now, in my research, I have not found that he actually said this or wrote this. But a lot of people give him credit for having said it. So if he didn't say it or didn't write it, then here's what you're getting from me. Alexis de Tocqueville is reputed to have said that the greatness of America lies in the fact that the goodness that exists in American people. And he supposedly said that if Americans ever cease to be good, America will cease to be great. This campaign, this year, is about the goodness of America. And we have as our candidate a real good man. As I talk to people in trying to understand the voting patterns that were taking place and understand what many people were saying, it all bound down to one fact. People were confusing goodness as weakness. You do not have to be bombastic in order to get your point across. You don't have to call people names in order to have your positions understood. You don't have to tell falsehoods in order to make headlines about your proposals. We have as our candidate a man who understands what it's like to be an American. None of us have had the same experiences. All of us are but the sum total of our experiences. And all of our experiences have not been pleasant. But all of our experiences, in one form or another, have been blessings. And we are blessed with a candidate who understands what it is to restore the goodness that exists in this great country. He will get us away. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you really did not come here to hear me. And I did not come here to speak. I came here to introduce and present to you a good man. A man who understands the fundamentalist fairness upon which this democracy is built, a man who will restore the goodness of this business and take us to where this country can be. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, one who I know, who you know, but most of all, who knows us.
Take nothing less than the supreme best. Do not obey, you must be the same if you can pass the test. Just move on to a greater day.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. South Carolina. And my buddy Jim Clyburn, you brought me back. It's a man of enormous integrity. All of those of you who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign. Just days ago, the press and the pundits had declared this candidacy dead. Now, thanks to all of you, the heart of the Democratic Party, we've just won, and we've won big because of you. And we are very much alive. Look, I told you all that you could launch a candidacy. You launched Bill Clinton, Barack Obama to the presidency. Now you launched our campaign on the path to defeating Donald Trump. This campaign is taken off. So join us. Go to JoeBiden.com, sign up, volunteer, contribute if you can, but we need you, we want you, and there's a place for you in this campaign. Folks, as we celebrate tonight here in Columbia, let me talk directly to Democrats across America, especially those who will be voting on Super Tuesday. This is the moment to choose the path forward for our party. This is the moment, and it's arrived. Maybe sooner than anyone guessed it would, but it's here. And the decisions Democrats make all across America in the next few days will determine what this party stands for, what we believe, and what we'll get done. If Democrats nominate me, I believe we can beat Donald Trump. Keep Nancy Pelosi in the House of Representatives as Speaker and take back the United States Senate. So join us. My fellow Democrats across America, join us. If Democrats want to nominate someone who will build on Obamacare, not scrap it, take on the NRA and gun manufacturers, not protect them. Stand up and give the poor a fighting chance for the middle class to get restored, not raise their taxes and keep the promises we make. Then join us. And if the Democrats want a nominee who's a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, a proud Democrat, an Obama-Biden Democrat, join us. We have the option of winning big or losing big. That's the choice. We need to build on the coalition and legacy of the most successful president in our lifetime, Barack Obama. And the way we do this is by bringing Americans together of every race, ethnicity, gender, economic station, Democrats, Republicans, independents, people of every stripe. Look, just like we did here in South Carolina. And like we can do across the entire country on Tuesday and beyond. Folks, win big or lose, that's the choice. Most Americans don't want the promise of revolution. They want more than promises. They want results. They want to give all Americans access to real opportunity, to be able to have affordable health care for all Americans, an environment with clean air and clean water, an education system that funds our schools, pays our teachers, makes community college free, a nation that will stand up to and beat the NRA. Reform our criminal justice system. root out institutional racism, mobilize the world against climate change. And an economy that works, rewards work, not just wealth. My dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than the paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about decency, it's respect. It's about your place in the community. It's being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. For all our families, for all our communities. Because that's the right thing to do. That's what makes us Democrats. Talk is cheap. False promises are deceptive. And talk about revolution and change in anyone's life. We need real changes right now. Something I've done my whole career, and I'll do as president. So this is an election to spend all our time in a battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. This is a battle for the soul of the United States of America. And we're in an incredibly perilous moment, as all of you know. Winning means uniting America, not sowing more division and anger. It means not only fighting, but healing the country. We have to beat Donald Trump and the Republican Party, but here's the deal. We can't become like them. We can't become like them. We can't have an ever-ending war. Above all, it's time for America to get back up. The country is so ready. So ready. Once again, fight for the proposition that we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men and women are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. We say it all the time, but we've never fully lived up to it. But we've never before, until this president, walked away from it. That's right. And it's the reason why Jim and I and all of us are in this. I believe with every fiber of my being that all men and women are created equal. You know, I saw it a few days ago in a town hall in Charleston, Jim. I spoke with Reverend Anthony Thompson, whose wife, Myra, was studying the words of her Bible with 8 other parishioners at Mother Emanuel 4.5 years ago. It was a weekly routine, reading Scripture and finding purpose and faith in God and in each other. And in an instant, hate, vengeance, white supremacy pierced that faith, and they were lost forever. But you know what I found the most remarkable thing in my career thus far? Remarkable about Reverend Thompson and the families of the Emanuel 9. Is through all that pain, yes, all that grief, they forgave. Yes, sir. Yes. And here's the deal. In their forgiveness, they brought more change to South Carolina than any that's occurred over the previous 100 years. Think about it. The Confederate flag came down. Real change. That's why the Sunday after, Jill and I and my family, we came back to Mother Emanuel on Sunday services after the funeral of the victims. Because 6 weeks earlier, we had lost our son, Bo. And we needed to be healed, too. We need to be healed. I really mean this. We needed whatever they were exuding. And with every season that's passed, they've gotten up and found purpose to live life worthy of the ones they lost, worthy of the blessings to live in this remarkable country. We left here, having arrived in overwhelming pain, thinking we can do this. We can get through this. So I want to tell you, it's no small reason why I'm in this race. People like all of you here tonight, all around the country. The days of Donald Trump's divisiveness will soon be over. No. And as Jim, quoting de Tocqueville, he was right. This multi-ethnic country we call our democracy, America, it can't survive unless we focus on our goodness. We can build a more perfect union Because the American people in the last 3.5 years have seen the alternative. No, I really mean it. Think about it. They've seen how utterly mean, selfish, lack of any sense of empathy or concern for anybody else. The president, who not only has horrible policies, but the way he mocks and makes fun of other people. To all of you here in South Carolina, and especially Jim Clyburn, my friend, who lifted me and this campaign on his shoulders.
That's right.
But I mean all of you. Many I don't have time to name, all of you. We, Jill and I, our daughter Ashley, my son Hunter has been on the phone straight through for me. My brothers, my sister, my 2 brothers, my sister, my 5 grandchildren, my 4 granddaughters who've come out on the campaign trail. We'll never forget what you've done for us. Well, we can say without fear of contradiction, the Bidens love you guys, man. The Bidens love you. That's real. And folks, now we need to stand behind Jamie Harrison, the next president of the United States, next senator of South Carolina. We need to send Joe Cunningham back to the House of Representatives. And all of us, all the Bidens, thank you. Thank you for everything, everything you've done for us. So folks, so here's the deal. Let's get back up. We're decent, we're brave, we're resilient people. We can believe again. We're better than this moment. We're better than this president. So get up, take back our country. This is the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Joe Biden, at times contemplative, at times fiery, getting the momentum back into the campaign very clearly there, Carol, tonight.
Introduced by Jim Clyburn,
Yes.
who many people believe Joe Biden should thank sincerely, because it was Jim Clyburn's endorsement that brought a lot of people out to the polls today. And that is the word from a lot of analysts.
Of course, giving credit to the electorate of South Carolina, saying we won and won big because of you. That is his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. He's helping down the stairs there. Jane Robelo is in the room there in Columbia with Joe Biden and the supporters, Congressman Clyburn. Jane, the speech was very much a declaration of, to me, of a renewal of momentum. How did you hear it?
Jane may be trying to.
Maybe even for the first time, Carol and Michael, we're kind of seeing who the real Joe Biden is. People talk about that he's a nice guy. He's not the guy that gets down in the mud and tackles debate opponents. And that's really what we heard Jim Clyburn say in introducing him. Jim Clyburn talked about what a decent guy he is, what a nice guy he is, what a man of character he is. But we don't really see that on the debate stage. We more see somebody who's trying to get his points across. I think in the Charleston debate, we saw a little example of how Joe Biden doesn't feel comfortable kind of getting down in the dirt with the other candidates. He was the only one who was stopping when his allotted time was up, and he kind of made a joke about that. But so far, that hasn't helped him. What Jim Clyburn was trying to say in introducing him in is, this is who this man is. This is a decent man, and was taking some digs at Donald Trump, saying you can be a great leader in this country without having to be mean to other people, without having to take people down. And then, as you said, when Joe Biden took the stage, very, very appreciative of South Carolina, flanked by Jim Clyburn, his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, and their daughter, Ashley. Very, very sentimental part of his speech. He talked about coming down right after the Mother Emanuel shooting and how difficult that was for them, because it was only weeks earlier that he had lost his son, Beau Biden. And he said he was coming down to South Carolina, traveling here with a lot of pain in his heart, and how healing it was for him to hear the families of the victims of the Mother Emanuel 9 offering forgiveness to the man who had taken the lives of their loved ones. And he said for that reason, South Carolina will always be very special to him. But it was sort of a humble acceptance speech. He did talk about his work with Barack Obama, restoring and making better Obamacare, talked about climate and a couple of other of his platforms, affordable housing. But mostly, I think you just got to see the nice guy from Delaware who served in the U.S. Senate, who served for 8 years as vice president, who's really trying to stand on that campaign platform as, I'm a decent guy, you can trust me, and as it says on the side of his campaign bus, he wants to restore the soul of a nation. A lot of digs at Donald Trump. He only used his name a couple of times, but definitely digging at Donald Trump by saying that it's time for the rancor in America to end, and he can restore that to the United States of America if he's elected. Also, at the beginning of his speech, laying out a good Super Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see how the candidate does from here. He won big. He's probably going to take all 54 delegates in South Carolina, but he doesn't have the war chest that Bernie Sanders has. Certainly not the war chest that Michael Bloomberg has or Tom Steyer. However, after a huge win like tonight, and then being number 2 in the delegate count, that's probably going to affect his war chest tremendously. Another point was, before he left the stage, he really encouraged South Carolina voters to support Jamie Harrison in his race against Lindsey Graham for the Senate, and to support 1st District Congressman Joe Cunningham in his re-election win. Those are the only 2 Democrats, Cunningham and Clyburn, the only 2 Democrat congressmen in the state of South Carolina. So he did take an opportunity on this stage in his acceptance speech to make a plug for those guys too. Carol and Michael.
Jane, speaking of Super Tuesday, do we know where Joe Biden is heading next?
Yes, thank you, Carol. Probably will leave tonight to go to Alabama. He'll go to Selma, Alabama, and then he'll go to Virginia, and then he'll, on Monday, be in Texas, I think Dallas and Houston, and then on Tuesday, he's heading to California. So he's trying to kind of shore up some of the southern vote, and then head out to Texas for the Southwest vote, and then California, of course, the delegate-rich state on Super Tuesday.
Jane Robelo, so well done there in Columbia with the Joe Biden supporters, and Joe Biden, the former vice president himself. We'll check back very, very shortly. Let's look at the numbers. We haven't seen the actual vote counts in a while here. Let's see how
53% of the vote in right now. Joe Biden with 50% of the vote. That's slightly lower than what we've seen.
3 points.
But still a commanding lead over Bernie Sanders with 19%. Tom Steyer's with 12%. Tom Steyer's, by the way, Michael, we understand, is going to speak at 9:15.
9:15 or so.
From Tom Steyer then. The rest of the candidates, Elizabeth Warren with 7%, Amy Klobuchar 3%. These numbers haven't really changed that much in terms of percentages. Tulsi Gabbard with 1% of the vote.
Our analysis tonight from Brent Nelson, Furman University. Brent, you didn't see this coming, north of 50% for Joe Biden tonight.
Oh, not at all. I think the best poll result that Joe Biden had was about 40%. So this exceeds expectations, and that's what you're always looking for.
Right.
Who exceeds expectations and who doesn't do as well as people thought. So Joe Biden, this is a big night for him. If he gets a nomination, it's South Carolina that put him in as a nominee. So I don't think there's any question about that. But he's got a path forward now, and of course Bernie Sanders does too. Don't count him out. Just because he didn't maybe do as well as he thought he would, there's clearly a path for him. It's the other candidates that are going to have a tough time in the next couple of days trying to figure out what their path forward will be.
We mentioned this before, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Congressman Jim Clyburn from the 6th District, endorsed Joe Biden a few days ago, and this tremendous turnout tonight. Can he take some credit for that?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes we political scientists are not as enthusiastic about endorsements as other people are. But in this case, I think James Clyburn was able to calm people's hearts and give them a sense that this is a candidate that you've known for a long time, and he's still a good man, as he always says. Joe Biden coming out of New Hampshire was really a wounded candidate. And you can see after the speech tonight what he can do when he feels confident. He's a much better speaker. He reaches out and touches people's hearts. When he's playing catch-up ball, he's not quite as connected with people. So I really thought tonight you saw Joe Biden at his best.
Joe Biden talking tonight about comparing himself to the other candidates without naming them, talking about himself as a true Democrat.
Yeah,
Professor,
Democrats, he said, want a Democrat.
Right, school us, Professor. What does he mean by that?
Well, I mean, that's a direct arrow at Bernie Sanders and I think Michael Bloomberg as well. So Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist, has never identified with the Democratic Party wholly and fully. And Michael Bloomberg at times has been a Republican, at times has been an independent. So I think Joe Biden was saying, you've known me for a long time. Trust me, I'm going to be the Democrat that you always knew and the party that you always loved.
If Joe Biden hadn't done this well tonight, you and I talked earlier, and you said that without a win here, there really isn't much of a path forward.
No, this was his make or break state. If he had failed here, it would have been Sanders and Bloomberg probably. I'm not really sure whether Bloomberg has room anymore. We'll see in the next couple of days. Biden has to show that he can raise money. He doesn't have enough money to be on TV in all the states on Super Tuesday and forward. Help. Well, I imagine he's on the phone right now.
Yeah.
But he has to be able to buy those TV ads. He has to be able to put people on the ground to make sure that his people come out to vote.
Right. That room you're looking, by the way, on the right side of your screen, that's the Tom Steyer room. We expect him to come into the room here in just about 5 minutes. Brent, are you surprised that Tom Steyer didn't siphon off more of Joe Biden's support in South Carolina?
Well, I think we saw in Nevada that there was a lot of enthusiasm for Steyer when people were asked to respond to a survey, but when it actually came down to casting a caucus vote, they really didn't do so. And so I think that's a little bit what happened here. I think this may be the Clyburn effect as well. African Americans may have been looking for somebody who was more exciting or somebody who might have a better path forward.
Somebody they know.
Somebody they know, but Steyer was kind of the exciting guy, the new guy on the block, and Clyburn basically pulled that back and said, no. Joe, he's the guy that we know and love.
But is Steyer really the new guy on the block? He has run advertising in this state probably since 2016.
Long time.
Well,
and a lot of money.
That's true, but I don't think he doesn't have a lot of name recognition outside of South Carolina. So in some sense, he's still the new guy on the block. He did what he needed to do. He brought his name into conversation around the country, but I just don't think he has any way to go forward when the race is going to get a little more crowded with another billionaire in the race, with Bloomberg coming in, and Biden doing so well here. Steyer really needed Biden to do poorly. If that had happened, then people may look around and look at Steyer. But I think he has probably run his course. And I don't know that he'll drop out, but I don't think that he's going to get a lot of attention in the future.
Was there a tone issue with Steyer at all in all those ads? We heard from him for so long, as Carol said.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd have to see the survey results on that. Some people he put off, but other people he really attracted with his talk about
the room.
The dancing in the room. No, I think. His talk about reparations, for instance, he was very clear on that. His talk about environmental justice. Bernie Sanders talks about that a little bit, but he really made it central to his campaign. So there are some issues that Steyer raised, but in a lot of these political races, you start with a certain reputation and then you build on that. And no one knew him, and so. Maybe he's got a future in 4 years or so, but I think people have been introduced, they know where he stands, but I don't think he has a way forward.
Well, history has shown us, and we've talked about this as well, that this is a make or break state for many candidates. But with Super Tuesday coming up so quickly, we're probably not going to see any fallout until the middle of next week, right?
Well, that's true, but I still think South Carolina did its job again.
Right.
It winnowed the field. It may well have identified the nominee. It's a long race. I'm not trying to predict this, but I think South Carolina once again proved that it is the make or break state.
Brent, we have Pete Buttigieg on stage. Let's listen in.
All of our competitors, and I congratulate Vice President on his victory tonight in South Carolina. I want to thank the voters of South Carolina, especially black voters who showed that famous Southern hospitality over the last year, welcoming us into their homes and churches and neighborhoods and businesses. I want to thank our entire team, every supporter of this effort, and yes, everyone who has gone to Pete.
Well, there it is. I just heard the crowd. Can we go back?
I want to thank our amazing campaign family and my amazing family, especially Chasten, who has stood with me from northern Indiana all the way here to North Carolina. At this moment, as a mounting epidemic threatens our communities and our economy, we are seeing just how much it's going to matter to have serious judgment and a steady temperament in the Oval Office. Not to mention a belief in science and evidence. So more than ever, we know we cannot afford to get this wrong. We cannot afford 4 more years of Donald Trump in this country. And that means we cannot afford to succumb to the politics that have failed us. We can't go on with a politics that has us at each other's throats instead of having each other's backs. We can't go on with a politics that defines us by who we voted for in the past instead of what we can achieve together in the future. We know that the challenges of this moment globalization rippling through our economy in new ways. Americans are watching as the cost of housing and health care rise while wages can't keep pace. And with so much at stake, we must be prepared to meet these challenges of the future. Americans are crying out for a new kind of leadership, hungry to be united in a common purpose. And we know that if we are to tackle these challenges, we have to come together to write a new story for our future. So let's make this election about that future. And let's make it a future where every American belongs. This is how we win. It's always how we've won. Democrats win when we offer a new vision, a new generation of leadership, calling our country to its highest values and its deepest ideals. Now, as a mayor who lives hundreds of miles away from Washington, in a middle-class neighborhood, in a diverse city in the industrial Midwest, what I'm offering is a new approach in this election. I'm offering a nominee and a presidency where you could turn on the TV and actually feel your blood pressure go down instead of up through the roof. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm offering a chance to turn the page on our broken politics without turning most Americans off from our politics. I'm offering a way to gather together a powerful American majority, united not only by the incumbent that we stand against, but the vision that we stand for. And I have seen that majority reaching from the Carolinas to California, from Virginia to Vermont. From the formerly incarcerated individual helping youth in his community to the former Republican, I love when that happens, who now organizes for our campaign. It is that coalition, not one faction, that will bring about a future where there is no such thing as an uninsured American or an unaffordable prescription. A future where mental health is treated as seriously and dealt with as openly as any other medical issue. The crisis in
Obviously, we're having some difficulty with the audio and video there with the Pete Buttigieg campaign. He's in Raleigh, North Carolina tonight.
He is moving on to the Super Tuesday states. We do expect to hear from Tom Steyer any minute now. We have word from the Associated Press and our Amanda Crawford in the room that Steyer is going to drop out of the race here very shortly.
I think the term they're using is suspending his campaign. Let's take a look, if we can, while we're waiting for Steyer to enter the room and clarify this for us. Let's take a look at the results if we can. The race was called for Joe Biden very early. Actually, I think it was about 7:01 this evening. About 7:01. When exit polling showed him as the presumptive winner of South Carolina. Here you see the numbers, 50%. This is with 58% of the precincts reporting Joe Biden with 50%. Bernie Sanders at 19%. Those numbers are staying steady. Tom Steyer with 12%. Pete Buttigieg with 8%.
And Carol, those numbers have held since pretty much since we went on the air about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago.
If we could see the rest of the candidates and see how they rank here. Elizabeth Warren with 7, Amy Klobuchar with 3. These numbers have stayed steady too in terms of percentages. Tulsi Gabbard with 1%. Many of these candidates have left the state already. They are looking ahead to Super Tuesday, where there is a treasure trove of delegates to be had.
Yes.
South Carolina offering, I believe, 54 delegates, 53 or 54.
Brent Nelson of Furman, our analyst tonight, we look at Elizabeth Warren with 7%. Brent, this is not a good night for her at all.
No, it's very disappointing for her, and it follows on several disappointing results. So, you know, Elizabeth Warren is one of those candidates who works tremendously hard. There's no doubt that she's put her heart and soul into this. But right now, it looks like people have chosen, if they're in that, what they call the liberal lane, progressive lane, they've chosen Sanders. And so I think Warren is really struggling right now, and I don't really see where she can pick up any real support in Super Tuesday states either.
We understand that Amy Klobuchar is speaking right now. If we can dip into that while we are waiting, Tom Steyer. Amy Klobuchar is speaking.
But we know that we can bring dignity back to the White House. Because when I talk to people and I say what I like to think about is that we need to build a blue wall of Democratic votes around states like North Carolina and states in the Midwest. And when we build that blue wall, it's going to be so great in the next election in 2020, and we are going to make Donald Trump pay for it. And one of the things I find when I talk to people that maybe voted for him or stayed home is that they get sick and tired of his whining. It might not be the first thing you think about, but they are tired of it. He blames everyone. He blames Barack Obama for our problems. He blames the Fed chair that he nominated. He blames the generals that he commands. And yes, he once blamed the entire Kingdom of Denmark. Who does that? That's what he does. He even blamed the Prime Minister of Canada, this is one of my favorite ones, for cutting him out, Trump, out of the home version, the Canadian version of Home Alone 2. That is a true story. So instead, I want you to picture this, and I'll talk here at the end about myself, because I got a different
Carol, from Amy Klobuchar, we go to Tom Steyer. That was his wife introducing him there in Columbia just now.
Hey, you guys. So let me say this.
I got into... I got into this race for really, really good reasons. I got into this race because I thought that people weren't adequately addressing racial injustice in this country. And it's true. And it's true. And I thought that we were at risk as a country in terms of climate, and that expressed itself in terms of environmental injustice, and we've certainly seen that, and that's true. And that we live in a country that's deeply unjust economically, where rich people have been profiting at the expense of everybody else. And that's really true. And my family and I have been working on those things for decades. And I didn't get into this race and start talking about things to try and get votes. I was in this race to talk about things that I care the most about and that I continue to care the most about. And let me just say this, I think the team that we have, more than half people of color, more than half women, 30% LGBTQ, that is the team that I want to ride in to battle with. That is the crew, that's the crew I want on my side. So let me say this, I've never worked with a better group of people who've worked harder or in a more dedicated way. The endorsers from South Carolina are some of, I want to say, some of the most outstanding human beings I've ever met, standing up for what's right. I am so proud to be with them. And the group of people in South Carolina, I'm looking at some of them right now, are a team of people who people use these words, but I am humbled to be working side by side with those guys. I'm humbled to be working side by side by some of the women from South Carolina. And honestly, the people who've endorsed me have stood up in a very red state where I have seen things, honestly, that have broken my heart. Because as much as I've loved the people here, and I've said, I'm not leaving. You may want me out of here. I'm not leaving. We're already figuring out ways, in fact, to make sure that we stay in South Carolina. And I have loved the people, and I feel as if their fight is my fight, and I want to make sure that's true going forward. But there's no question today that this campaign, we were disappointed with where we came out. I think we got 1 or 2 delegates from congressional districts, which I thank South Carolina for, and the people. But I said, if I didn't see a path to winning, that I'd suspend my campaign. And honestly, I can't see a path where I can win the presidency. So am I going to continue to work on every single one of these issues? Yes, of course I am, because I've never stopped. That's what I'm here for. And let me say, I kept trying to say this during the campaign, I'm a huge grassroots person. I'm a register engaged turnout person, young people, black people, Latinos, people who are overlooked. Let's make sure their voices are heard, their votes are counted. And I promise I'm going to do that because I've been doing that. And let me say this, I, of course, will be supporting, I've said from the beginning, every Democrat is 1,000,000 times better than Trump. Trump is a disaster. And let me say this, I mean, we're in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham's a disaster. He's a disaster for the people here. So of course I'll be working on that. And let me say one last thing. When the Lord closes a door, He opens a window. I will find that window and crawl through it with you. I promise you that. I love you very much. This has been a great experience. I have zero regrets. Meeting you and the rest of the American people is the highlight of my life. I love you right back. I love you right back. Thank you so much.
That was Tom Steyer, introduced to the crowd there by his wife, Kat, saying that he is suspending his campaign. He said, I cannot see a path where I can win the presidency.
This is a man who spent millions of dollars on television ads, upped his name recognition, upped his profile in South Carolina, set the agenda in many ways, and is essentially leaving the race tonight enthusiastically. And there wasn't a great exhale of disappointment from the crowd, Carol. There was excitement.
Well, Amanda Crawford is in the room, and Amanda, was this expected to a certain extent by his supporters? There did not seem to be, we didn't hear any gasps. This did seem to be somewhat expected.
You can go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if Amanda can hear us.
Happy with
Can you hear us, Amanda?
The conversation. I can hear you. Yep, I can hear you.
There we go.
You guys hear me?
Yes, Carol has a question.
Okay, okay.
There didn't seem to be a great deal of...
I heard Carol's question, actually.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I don't think a lot of people were shocked. I think they wanted him to gain more delegates and more votes in South Carolina. But as more and more of those results came in, I think a lot of people here in the room tonight had a feeling about what was going to happen. But so many of them are faithful supporters. There are a lot of people in this room tonight who are not from here in South Carolina. They traveled from around the country to be here because they latched on to some of the specific things that Steyer talked about, the environment, racial injustices. So I think they're pleased with what he brought to the conversation, and they're excited to see how he uses the momentum that he did gain moving forward. You heard him say he does plan to support the nominee, whoever that may be, and he ended his speech just now to a kind of an uproarious applause by saying, when the Lord closes a door, he opens a window. I will find that window and I will crawl through it with you. So I think they're excited to see what he does next. Guys.
Amanda, he did not do this from the stage. Any whisper that he will endorse Joe Biden or another candidate?
You know, I asked him that repeatedly, and he, first of all, said he didn't want to speculate about things he didn't think was going to happen. I think he did expect to perform a little better in South Carolina than he did. He was hoping for more votes and more delegates. He has not given an indication so far. He has simply said that any Democrat would be better than President Donald Trump, and he's determined to see a Democrat win back the White House and win the House and Senate, win those races down the ballot. So it will be interesting to see if he throws his support behind anyone before a nominee is named. We'll have to wait and see what he does.
Well, he certainly, as you mentioned, did seem to leave the door open for more of a profile in public life, whatever that might be.
Yeah, you know, his wife moved to Columbia. She is who introduced him here tonight. She said, y'all. She said, I've lived in the South long enough to say y'all. They do seem to have taken a liking to the people here in South Carolina. He said that meeting the people here, he's met some of the most outstanding human beings he's ever met. He said, for those of you who are maybe tired of seeing some of his ads, which you've probably seen one or two, he said, you're not getting rid of him. He's going to find a way to stay in South Carolina. He told his supporters here tonight that they're already exploring ways to stay here, whether that's some kind of get out the vote campaign, whether it's something about the climate, which he has said is his #1 issue. We'll have to wait and see, but he has said that he plans to find ways to still have a presence in South Carolina.
We'll be curious to see how he does that. Amanda Crawford with Tom Steyer suspending his campaign just moments ago there in Columbia tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. And now, we did have some difficulties earlier with Pete Buttigieg's audio and video, but we do have him back again, so let's take a quick listen.
And you're right. You know, what you're describing shows why it's not just about making sure everybody has insurance. A lot of people have insurance, but the copays are so high or the deductibles are so high that you're still in trouble and maybe even hesitating to get the care you need. Or you have these yearly caps. So part of what I'm proposing is the out-of-pocket cap on the plan we create. It's going to be monthly. And it'll be, for low-income folks, there won't be any charge at all. But no matter what, it won't go above $250 on the prescription side. And it's got to be monthly because have you ever been in that situation having to wait till a certain month to get something done? It doesn't make any sense medically. But that's the situation people are in. This is also why the idea of Medicare for all who want it is to create a better plan with better deductibles and copays and subsidize it so for low-income people it's free, and no matter how much income you have, the premiums are never more than 8.5% of your income. That way everybody can afford coverage. And the way I see it, I'm pretty sure my plan will, in terms of the copays, the deductibles, and the coverage, it'll be the best one out there. If I'm right, everybody will pick it, and pretty soon it'll be Medicare for all. But if I'm wrong and some people have plans that really are better, well, I'm going to be really glad we didn't kick them off of them. So let's put a little humility into the policy and let people figure it out on their own. One more big thank you to Reggie Love for being your voice for the Q&A. It was a lot of fun. Such a big crowd. Thank you.
Pete Buttigieg in the Tar Heel State this evening, apparently moving on to Super Tuesday. Tom Steyer, as we just heard, is not. He has decided to suspend his campaign. We would like to go back to Pete Buttigieg. I guess he has just a few more things to say.
Wrapping up.
After that, we're going to show you where the statistics are right now for the vote in South Carolina.
I feel that hope, too. It propels me. And I feel that hope because of the experience of my city. Because of my experience in uniform, seeing what fellow Americans can do to come to trust each other with feel that hope because I'm not that removed from being a teenager in Indiana wondering if he would ever fit in anywhere. And now I'm standing in front of you, happily married, a veteran, a two-term mayor, seeking your vote for the American presidency. We can deliver on our hopes. So are you ready to spread that to everybody you know? And are you ready to come to this with some joy in the process? And are you ready to make history in this election and bring an end to the Trump era in November? Well, with you on my side, I think we can't go wrong. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for coming. Let's go on to victory. Thank you.
Pete Buttigieg in North Carolina.
Super Tuesday State coming up soon.
It certainly is. Let's take a look now, if we can, at the results so far in the South Carolina primary. As we mentioned earlier, and if you're just joining us, the election here, the primary election here, was called for Joe Biden at about 7:01 based on the results of exit polling. And now we see 67% of the vote in. Joe Biden does have a commanding lead with 50% of the vote, followed by Bernie Sanders with 19%, Tom Steyer with 11%, and Pete Buttigieg, who we just heard from, with 8% of the vote. Now, there is another slate of candidates to show you the results of, if we could take a look at that and see where those candidates are standing right now. Elizabeth Warren with 7%, Amy Klobuchar with 3%, Tulsi Gabbard with 1%. Those numbers, percentage-wise, have not changed probably, Michael, in what, the last hour and a half?
Been submitted for a couple of hours right now with 68% of the vote in right now, which seem to indicate that that's what we're going to see with 100% of the vote. Brett Nelson, Tom Steyer leaving the race tonight. How significant is that for Joe Biden, who declares himself back in the race very much, having been declared dead by the pundits? He's back, as he said tonight. What does it mean to him?
Well, I think Steyer voters, they're sort of all over the board. So I think some of them will go to Biden, but many of them may end up in the Sanders camp.
Interesting.
You know, Steyer's an interesting guy. He has raised some important issues. He's raised his profile. I'm not exactly sure what he plans to do from here on in, but he has certainly gotten a number of people excited about not just him, but about some of the things that he talks about. So that will be something that we'll have to move into the campaign as we go forward, some of those issues.
It's interesting that Amanda mentioned that there were people in that room tonight from all over the country. You don't hear about a candidate really bringing that kind of support along.
Importing them.
Yeah, you know, I thought the interesting thing was how joyful people were at a guy who was, you know, withdrawing from the race. So I think there was something more to the Steyer campaign than just Tom Steyer. There was something about environmental justice and reparations and racial justice that he talked about. But I didn't see any tears. I saw a lot of backslapping and a kind of joyful excitement. And so that is not a normal campaign. And so I think he was trying to do some different things. Probably knew that he was never going to be nominated, but wanted to get some things into the conversation. And he certainly did that on television here in South Carolina.
Yeah, agenda setting is pretty much it.
Let's pull back a little bit and look at the importance of South Carolina in the national picture. Now, it is the first primary in the South, and it does seem to be a little bit more diverse on the Democratic side than some of the states that have come before South Carolina. So
absolutely,
it does have a history of predicting who the eventual nominee is, right?
Yes, since 2000, both parties have nominated the eventual, or have the eventual nominee has won the South Carolina primary. Right. There are only 2 times and 1 in each party. So I think it's really important to understand that the first 3 primaries, caucuses, are sort of kind of the preliminary events. They set the groundwork. But South Carolina, because it is diverse, because it looks more like the rest of America, begins to, I really think it's the beginning of the race. And for a lot of electoral history, it has identified the nominee. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a struggle. Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders 4 years ago, still had to work hard all the way to the convention, but it identifies the front runner. Now, I'm not ready to say that Joe Biden is the front runner. I think we have 2 front runners. We have Sanders and Biden, and we're going to find out very soon which one of them is going to attract the most delegates and the most votes on Tuesday.
And speaking of that, North Carolina is a Super Tuesday state. How is North Carolina looking right now? It's been a blue state before, back to the red. What's your take on North Carolina and how it looks politically right now?
That is going to be very interesting because, again, James Clyburn has pull in South Carolina, but he has pull in the rest of the country as well. He is a very prominent African-American politician, civil rights leader, and his reputation goes way beyond our state. So I think his endorsement will have some effect in North Carolina. Now, North Carolina tends to be much more liberal than South Carolina, even in the Democratic Party. So you have more university cities and places like that. So I think Bernie Sanders is going to run stronger in North Carolina, may beat Biden, but I do think that it's going to be a lot closer from here on in. And I think Biden is sort of hoping and counting on the southern states in Super Tuesday, Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, going the way of South Carolina. And then, yeah, I don't think he has any hope in California. He might have some hope in Texas now, though, too. So I think this is big. He's got to raise some money. He's got to carry this momentum forward. He's got to touch people's hearts. What he did tonight, I think, shows that he's got the energy and is ready to do it.
Will we have the nominee, do you think, after Super Tuesday?
After okay, I guess I think yes. I think we will.
Maybe.
But there's always a caveat. I think if Bloomberg does well and can draw a lot of votes away from both Biden and Sanders, that you will find more of a chance of going to a contested convention.
Because that will be his first test.
Sure.
The Super Tuesday.
And that's the first time that South Carolina has not had all the candidates on the ballot going forward. So this is a little bit different for us. We weren't able to evaluate the Bloomberg candidacy. But I do think that we often talk about contested conventions. It's sort of a political geek's dream, the old days of brokered conventions. But the primary process is such that a candidate gets out in front and then builds momentum. And near the end of the race, it's just a lot of big victories for the presumptive nominee.
And we have seen certainly tonight that there's no buying the nomination. Money will not necessarily speak.
No, and I don't know what that means for Bloomberg, but Steyer was, he hadn't been a politician before. He literally bought his way to third place. But that only takes you so far. Money only takes you so far. If money was the deal, Biden wouldn't have won. So, you know, Biden has a reputation. He's been in this game for a long time. He has long-term relationships and a network. That's what really matters. But we'll see if he can get the amount of money he needs to run forward.
All right. I wonder if we can take a look and see again at the numbers. We've been watching the percentages throughout the evening. I think right now 75% of the vote is in. Joe Biden still at 50%. Bernie Sanders up a little bit at 20%. Tom Steyer 12%. Pete Buttigieg at 8%. Again, Tom Steyer said tonight he is suspending his campaign.
The polls did not show a 30-point spread between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. It's a fascinating vote in South Carolina tonight. Shows that polling, as good as it is, as good as the science is, Brent, you know about that, it pales in comparison to democracy itself. It really does.
Well, you saw it there. Elizabeth Warren in about 5th place tonight.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, she is not in South Carolina tonight. She spoke in Houston just a little bit away. Taggart Houck following her campaign. Tag, what'd she have to say tonight?
Yeah, well, Michael, you mentioned it there, but Elizabeth Warren starting her day in Columbia. She then shifted to Little Rock, Arkansas, and tonight she is in Houston, Texas, though. We want to play what she said. This is a full clip of the sound. She thanked her supporters that she has, and she says, "This is not over. They have to keep fighting."
Hello, Houston! So, results from South Carolina are coming in, and I want to say congratulations to Vice President Biden. I will be the first to say that the first 4 contests haven't gone exactly as I'd hoped. If you want to change the outcome in the next contest, go to ElizabethWarren.com, chip in now, get involved. Super Tuesday's 3 days away. We want to gain as many delegates to the convention as we can, from California to right here in Texas. You know, it may take days or even longer to know the full results from Super Tuesday, but they will be critical in sorting out who our nominee will be this year. My campaign is built for the long haul, and we are looking forward to these big contests.
Looking ahead, the Palmetto poll, though, back in South Carolina at Clemson, ranking her 4th in the state. Obviously, tonight she's projected with a 5th place finish there, but we also did chat a lot with her. We had a one-on-one with her yesterday when she was in Greenville. She had only been in the upstate 2 times since launching her campaign. She held 31 events in South Carolina, so certainly a disappointing night here for Team Warren. But as you heard right there, she is going to continue, and she's looking ahead to Super Tuesday. As the results come in, of course, we will continue to keep you posted as far as what is happening with Elizabeth Warren. But for now, back to you, Michael.
Tag, thank you for that. As the results come in, so do so does the feedback on social media and the posts.
A team at Clemson is analyzing all of those posts as they come through, and our Alan Devlin is live in the Social Media Listening Center. Alan?
Yeah, Michael Carroll, I'm standing here, just like you said, in the Clemson University Social Media Listening Center. And I'm joined by Will Henderson, the Associate Director of the Listening Center. So you guys have been in here monitoring, results as this primary kind of unfolded all night long. You're not done yet, and you've got this big wall of screens here that kind of showcase the work you guys are doing. Tell me a little bit about this one up here. What do we have here?
Yes, so this is our word cloud, and it gathers all of the common used words throughout all the public social media posts that we collect in our software. The larger the word, the more it's been used in the social media post.
Okay, and so something I found kind of interesting. About 30 minutes ago, Joe Biden was, the biggest word up there by far, and you didn't really see Steyer too much, but now it looks like up here, Steyer kind of showed up in the conversation again, being that, he just announced that he'll be dropping out.
Yes.
So, what does that kind of mean for this word cloud?
Yes, so we do see Steyer enlarging in the word cloud, and that is both a combination of positive and negative reactions. People are happy that he dropped out. Also, people are sad that he dropped out because he came in 3rd place in the South Carolina primary. So he had lots of votes that went towards his candidacy.
Okay, exactly. And this is screened right down here. What are we looking at down here? We've got these circles floating around the world here, all the candidates' names. Tom Steyer, he's got a red ball. All the other candidates have green. What does that kind of mean?
At the moment, that means all the other candidates except Tom, they're being spoken about in a positive light on social media. Tom is the only one at the moment that's being talked about in a negative light majority. So when it comes to him dropping out, people are talking about in different Facebook groups and also on Twitter, sad that he dropped out. Also looking forward to his 2024 presidential election. Maybe he'll run again in 4 years. Also, people are asking about his cabinet seat and seeing if he'll take a cabinet seat upon the presidential election.
Okay. And so right now it just seems, with that announcement, a lot of things are generating in Tom Steyer. Just the name is all over the place right now since he's announced he's going to be back in this race. So, we're here in the 9 o'clock hour and we're moving forward. What are you guys going to be doing for the next couple of hours here in the Social Media Listening Center as, these votes continue to come in and the night kind of wraps up here?
Yes, absolutely. So as we continue throughout the night, we will recap the entire night, and we send out to press and everything data reports of everything that we analyze. So after the results have come in and continue to come in throughout the night, we will we'll gather reactions on social media posts through Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and all gather it to really put together what the public is talking about when it comes to the candidates.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Will. Great work you and your team have been doing here all day. And so again, you just heard it, Tom Steyer getting a little bit more traction now that he's announced he'll be dropping out on social media at least. That's both positive and negative sentiment across the board. Just a brief look into the social media world here in South Carolina, thanks to the Clemson University Social Media Listening Center. But for now, I'll throw it back to you guys in the studio.
Alan, thank you very much. It's been fascinating to watch all day. Biden actually came out as a big name early on today while the primary voting was going on. And speaking of that, let's take a look now and see how the results are coming in. 85% of the vote. We're closing in on that 100% mark. Joe Biden with 49%, Bernie Sanders 20%, Tom Steyer's 12%, Pete Buttigieg 8%.
Yeah, just under that 50%. I think it bears some emphasis here. When you look at this array of candidates, all the way down into the single-digit candidates here, Joe Biden is the former vice president of the United States, obviously the most well-known among the candidates, and he was really limping his campaign into South Carolina. So this is a big reclamation, if you will. Brent Nelson joining us now. Brent, were you surprised at all that the Biden campaign didn't do better in Iowa and in New Hampshire?
Without African Americans in great numbers in either one of those states, it was very hard for Biden to make a big impact.
Even among Democrats?
Even among Democrats. I mean, he knew, and I think, he knew going in that he was not going to do particularly well in Iowa or New Hampshire. Now, I don't know that he thought he was going to do quite as poorly, and that was the big question mark coming into South Carolina. But Joe Biden does best among minority voters in the Democratic Party. And South Carolina, we don't know exactly what the proportions are right now, but it was somewhere between 55 and 60% of African American voters. Those are the people that he's always been popular among. And so when they said South Carolina was his firewall, they meant it a long time ago. Now, I think it was interesting how weak he was coming out of New Hampshire. And that was the kind of X factor for South Carolina. Could he overcome some of those, characteristics that people were a little questioned a little bit, like, is he too old? He can't speak fluently anymore, or things like that. And he seems to have overcome that here. Again, I think once he gets in front of friendly crowds, he really becomes the candidate that you kind of thought he was going to be. So I think that's been the importance of South Carolina for the Biden campaign.
One thing we haven't touched on is that this, of course, is an open primary state. If you are a Republican, you could have voted today because the Republicans, of course, chose not to have a primary. And there were at least two concerted efforts to get people to come out to vote for Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
That did not work today, apparently.
No, I mean, if Sanders had done better than we expected, than the polls indicated, then we might have been talking about a genuine effect of Operation Chaos, for instance. But it's very hard to get people out to a primary poll anyway, and to get Republicans to come out and actually vote for Democrats. It's a really high bar. So I think I don't doubt that there were some Republicans that came out and probably voted for Sanders, but I think it was probably so small a number that it doesn't really have any effect.
The lower tier of candidates there, Brent, does anything surprise you, especially with regard to Elizabeth Warren? She worked pretty hard in South Carolina and coming in the single digits.
It has to be very disappointing to the Warren campaign. I really think they thought months ago that South Carolina would be maybe a state where they really went over the top, especially if they could knock back Bernie Sanders in the early states. They didn't do that. And I think Warren has difficulty with minority voters, so her base was white and educated. Well, so was Mayor Pete's. So was, in some sense, Amy Klobuchar. She has not done very well at all, 3% today. So I really don't see those three doing too well on Tuesday.
Do you think they just diluted each other's votes?
Yeah. Well, I think probably Mayor Pete and Klobuchar did. Warren has always, been more liberal than they are, but when in surveys, when we've asked people, what's your second choice? Well, people will say Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren, which doesn't seem, ideologically consistent, but a lot of people, they respond in who they like. And so I think Warren was a lot of people's second and third choice, and that just doesn't get you the nomination. It gets you attention. It got her some money, especially in the summer, but it hasn't carried on. And so I think there's a lot of disappointment out there. I can't see her going on past Super Tuesday unless she does something quite dramatic.
Let's talk about the stagecraft, Brent. How did Joe Biden do tonight in front of that crowd, a very friendly crowd tonight?
I think it was back to the kind of Joe Biden that we've known for 40 years. He has a way of connecting emotionally with people, especially when he tells his own story about the losses in his own life, and then he looks out at the crowd and he says, I know you've had losses too, and he talks about the massacre at Mother Emanuel, and that connects people at an emotional level. We can talk about policy all we want, and policy is important at a certain level, but when people are voting for president, they want to vote for somebody they can believe in, not just agree with.
The heart.
It's as much the heart as the head, maybe more the heart than the head. And so that's what Bernie has always been able to do. I think Biden showed that he could do it in a different way, with a different crowd, and we're going to see in the next few weeks whether that is the kind of connection that gets you over the top.
We've heard a lot of the speeches tonight after the vote, and very few pot shots at each other, considering that they have pretty wide ideological differences among them. A lot of the rancor was aimed at President Trump. Did that surprise you at all?
It's uncomfortable in a post-campaign speech to make a lot of charges at your competitors. But it is true. I thought this was most clear with Buttigieg's speech. It sounded like, at various times, like he was getting the crowd ready for him to withdraw from the race. He didn't say initially, hey, we did great and we're going on to victory on Super Tuesday. So I think he is preparing people for his eventual withdrawal. But he's going to call for unity, and I think that's what you saw.
Brent, let's take one more look at the results if we can. 85% of the vote again. You see Joe Biden there with 49%, Bernie Sanders 20, Tom Steyer 12, and Pete Buttigieg 8, and then the rest of the candidates here. They have really not changed in their percentage of the vote. We're
going to take a short break here. A reminder, you can stay with us on the WYFF4 mobile app and WYFF4.com, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with continuing coverage here at the 2020.
Dependable when it counts.
Heavier downpours now moving through Transylvania.
Accurate because